So these are the three top issues that we hear almost daily from meeting with operators across Canada. The first one being system capacity. Um, and we're going to get into each of these. So the first, yeah, that capacity of a system is critical for treatment and for flow, right? To be able to achieve your objectives. Then meeting regulations is connected to capacity, making sure that you're able to meet your limits, your permit limits, and that the treatment levels are sufficient so that you're able to pass that and discharge based on whatever and semi-annually, annually, or consistent, continuously, whatever your discharging permits allow, or irrigation. Then decision making is actually one of the, I might be surprising, but it's one of the top issues people have as operators, and working with councils and CAOs about understanding the decision making model, what questions they should be asking to understand what type of products they should be using. And so we've come up with a list of different questions that are very helpful to understand and compare different types of technologies, as well as processes, and come out with a very objective way to understand where you should go from there. So first, system capacity. So these are the main issues that tend to come up with capacity. So number one is population growth. So if your growth expands significantly, based on what you're able to treat on your population, that often can be a very difficult challenge. So one, the regulators will ask you to increase the size of your system, change your permit, change the frequency of your discharge from semi-annual to continuous, or from annual to semi-annual. They often ask for extra treatment processes as well. Where ActiZyme can come into play with that is it can be added to a system to decrease the sludge, accumulated sludge, which is the second one, and improve your capacity. But also it removes nitrogen, E. coli, fecal coliform, which we'll talk to later, that also helps the treatment process. So you're not just a passive system anymore. You're proactively treating. So by using a biological augmentation process, it actually improves the treatment beyond what is not naturally intended with a simple system like a lagoon system. That's just a lagoon system. So it does help improve it when you do have population growth, so you can take on more population. One of the big ones is accumulated sludge over and over. We have projects, and we're going to go through highlighted some of them, where that accumulated sludge causes a massive issue. Without that capacity, then the water just flows from system to system and quite easily causes issues when the sludge goes up, because then your nutrients levels go up. All your BOD, TSS, suspended solids move from one cell to another and continue to cause problems. And then nutrient buildup, right? So when you have accumulated sludge or increased population growth, your loading increases. And when your loading increases, then your nutrients build up, and that flows through the system. And one of the nutrients that continues to build up and is not released is phosphorus, which is turning to be a bigger and bigger problem, as most systems are now experiencing significant algae issues and such, because the phosphorus levels have just built up, right? They're not gassed off, they're not broken down. And with that, then phosphorus just builds up, and algae uses that to then have algae blooms. So what I'm going to go through for changing capacity is removing some sludge. So I'm going to highlight 9 different projects here. This is across Canada, Africa, South America. They all have various issues and challenges, all of which were stemming from sludge buildup. So nutrient buildup and sludge buildup often cause an issue for not being able to hit your regulated limits, and causing concern for everybody, both smell, operationally, and then clogging the system, causing issues for even being able to flow water from one system to the other, when a lot of pipes and or manholes get clogged up because of the sludge buildup in the system. So we're going to go through some of these you might have heard of before. There's a couple new ones that we just completed this year that we'll touch on, all of which will show a highlight the importance of managing your sludge. This first one here is in Delburn, Alberta. You might have seen one of the postcards that we've been giving out regularly, showing and depicting the pictures here. So Delburn had their manhole right before the lagoon was consistently clogged. They had issues with the sludge. It was pretty full. You could see the floating sludge on the side. It was quite gray, looked very inactive. There was very little flow from one sill to the other and quite full. They were having their inlet to the lagoon flushed on a regular basis because of the sludge had been going up into their manhole and their splitter box between the two lagoons. So they got an estimated survey come out to, or a company to get an estimate on removal. It was way outside their budget, over couple $100,000 for removal, plus management of the sludge disposal. So we jumped in there and helped them with some product and some consulting to help them. And we were able to remove and reduce the sludge by 71% in 1 year. So they did surveys before and after with a sludge judge and a TSS sensor, and we're able to see that they reduced their sludge by 71. You can see the difference in 2016, the color. Wow, like it was exactly the way the lagoon should look, and they were very, very happy. And now they've moved on to a maintenance just to maintain it from then on. So save them the cost of dredging, saves almost $100,000. Plus, then they had to figure out a way to dispose of it. So very successful for them to manage their sludge. This one here is quite a famous ActiZyme picture, kind of quite a few years ago, right back in 2009, where we first started working in Africa. This here, as many might think, the picture on the left looks like dirt, but it's actually a municipal lagoon. That's municipal sludge that is built up over decades. Again, probably overpopulated, so their flows were high. Nature did not break this down very fast at all. In fact, it overgrew it. All the plants and everything else were on top of it. The sludge was so compact that Bill Powell, one of our colleagues here at ActiZyme, put his weight on the sludge right near the pipe. I don't know why he'd want to do that, but he did. He risked it by putting his weight on that, and he almost felt that it was very strong, very compact sludge. And within 4 months, only 4 months of treatment, it liquefied the whole thing. So obviously here, their temperature is a lot higher, right? They're able to treat more effectively because the ambient temperature is so high, their water temperature is so high. Where everything in Canada takes about a year or so, maybe a year or two to work. There, within 4 months, they're able to get the results that they need to. So cleaned up their sludge here. Fantastic change, very dramatic. This is one in Ontario that we wrapped up here just about a year ago. This is in Bruce Mines, Ontario. There you can see the before and after. So their issues and concerns were connected to their effluent. They were reaching the limits of their regulated discharge, and they had lots of algae outbreaks covering most of or almost completely the lagoon. So their nutrient levels were quite high. The sludge levels were really high. And so we treated the system. And you can see they did a sonar before and after. And you can see the compact sludge and the non-consolidated sludge both drop significantly. It was a huge change. Cleaned up their cells. And the year after, there was very, very minimal algae. It was just a little bit in the one corner. So it had improved significantly. And we'll talk to their effluent improvements later. But they were able to reduce their sludge by 6,800 cubic meters in 1 year. Saved them over $125,000 just in removal alone. Incredible results. This is one here in Alberta, Castor, town of Castor. We just finished this one. We did the survey here just in, what was that? I think it was May. So they had two different outfits come out and measure the sledge. We came in and helped them in 2003 to 2004. And this is their system now. It looks incredible. Before it was quite crowded and visible sledge buildup. So they had decreased their sledge or increased their capacity by almost 3,000 cubic meters. That was a 73% reduction in 1 year. On top of managing, and that's the other point here too, is we're also managing the sledge during those years. So this one particularly was measured 2 years later. So there's typical buildup over 2 years that wasn't included in this. So they already reduced their sledge significantly by that 73% on top of that loading that they had for 2 years from the town. So a significant improvement. They were overjoyed with it. They decided to do a second year, even though we had reached the target. That was the goal, was to reduce about 2,500 cubic meters. So they already reached their target, but they wanted to keep on going because they wanted just to get it down to nothing. But they definitely had some, I don't know, enough success to really improve their capacity. So this is one we have here in the MD of Willow Creek down in southern Alberta. So we did this project with them, with Blaine in the town there. And you can see here, lagoon. I only had room to show you just the one lagoon. This is the west, they had an east and west lagoon. You can see that the sludge was all the way up to 40 inches. So it was coming up. This is the inlet. So it was building right in the inlet and filling up significantly almost the whole lagoon. And by the end of it, end of treatment in 2024, these blue and orange ones are 0 to 10 inches. So just a small skim of buildup at the bottom. And yeah, so they've been using ActiZyme regularly and to maintain the system as we are treating, as well as we did the significant treatment with the AZ Plus to really hit it down. And now their lagoon was like crystal clear, like it was crazy when they were taking their samples. We were present that day when they were doing their assessment, and often they were coming up like, "Oh, I don't see anything," and so there was a really impressive results when they saw the reduction of sludge. We did a project in Bow Island, even further south. Here, their issue, they had a mat, about 18 inches floating mat across the whole top of the cell. So there was no aeration, there was no sun, all blocking. It basically went septic, went really bad. They had well over, thousands of cubic meters of sludge. And within 1 year, they removed 5,000 cubic meters, saved them over $210,000, what they were estimated to remove all that sludge. So as William Lyons put it, who was the operator at the time, not only doesn't ActiZyme doesn't do exactly what they'll say they do, it does more. So he was quite an advocate for it. It really improved their system and reduced their sludge significantly. So as you can see, the pattern here is there's sludge buildup, and within 4 months to 12 months, we're able to reduce the sludge within the goal that we've set, so we can accomplish the reduction of sludge, increase the capacity of their system. This is one here in Vibank, Saskatchewan. So in Saskatchewan, this one here, they actually saw that it was sludge mounted outside of the water. They can see it mounded, rose above the water. And so they contacted a company for removal, and they were quoted about $60,000 for do it. It only cost them around 11 with ActiZyme's products, and within 1 year, removed the sludge mound completely. In fact, I remember presenting this at a conference in Saskatchewan, and the operators had changed. So Garth wasn't there anymore, and someone else came in, and they came to me and said, "Oh, I don't believe it. I don't think this happened." And I was like, no, seriously, this is the results. And he said, "Well, I'm gonna go back and drain my lagoon and see if there's any sludge there." So he did that. He came back the next conference and said, "And you're right, I drained the lagoon to the bottom. There's nothing there." And they were able to completely reduce all their sludge. So they were committed on an ongoing basis to to maintain their system after we were able to reclaim it. They too had some major issues with their effluent quality, and that was one of the reasons why we approached them to help them, which we'll talk about later. Then here's some international ones, some projects that we did in Honduras. So we have a foundation helping people in different areas in the world. Here, this is from coffee processing water. The smells were so bad. They were actually being told that may have to shut down some of these wastewater lagoons from operation because it just filled the whole town with a horrid stench. And so these sludge here, you can see before and after, what totally reclaimed. It looked like a fishing pond afterwards. And only in 4 months, completely digested all of the sludge. Now the water could be reused rather than being discharged into a river and polluting the river, continuing to pollute the rivers, or even through the water table, which could also be a pretty negative impact on the ecology and the environment around them. So quite beneficial for them to be able to reclaim. Again, 4 months because it's in really, really warm climates. And then this last one here, another one in La Paz, and you can see around the edges just the thick, thick sludge that was causing some really significant issues. So they here with this one, the smell was significant. The pHs were incredibly awful. They could not pump it and reuse the water. It absolutely killed all plants and life. And so it caused massive issues for treatment. They had nothing to do with it. They actually had to wait every year to wait till it seeped through the ground and evaporated so they can go in. Then they ended up going by hand and manually remove the sludge. So I actually saw it happen at one place. Now, I don't know if you operators would ever want to do that in Canada, is go down at the wheelbarrow and manually remove the sludge in the wheelbarrow. But that's what they had to do. So I saw guys, no t-shirts on, right, because it's so hot. Gum boots, that's it, no waders, in the middle of all this decaying organic matter with a shovel and a wheelbarrow, and that's how they were cleaning it out. So the amazing thing is now they don't have to do that. They haven't had to do that since we've been helping them. So it's been now, I think we're in our third or fourth year starting with them, and they haven't had to desludge their lagoons. So they're so overjoyed that, especially the operator, the new guy, right, doesn't have to go out there and actually have to go and desludge the lagoon and by hand, which is an awful smelly job to do. So this, and then we'll talk about their effluent quality as well in a minute, but the impact here is huge, right? They don't have a lot of electricity, a lot of money to manage the processes, and so they want something simple and natural, easy to use. So those are all the sludge projects we wanted to highlight so you can get an idea of that. Regardless of where we go in the world, the capacity issues are number one impacted because of the sludge volume, right? There's a certain loading from the population or the process that goes into it. That sludge volume goes up, it affects everything. Your nutrient levels, it affects odor, affects treatment, proper treatment. So by managing that sludge level, either on a very consistent, proper maintenance, or by coming in and reclaiming the lagoon and reducing the sludge, that you're able to reach your target treatment that you like. So next is meeting regulated limits. So these limits, well, as you know, as operators, sometimes it's hard to hit. Other times it's consistently easy to do. Some of you are lucky enough that your cells evaporate and your loading isn't significant. But accumulated sludge does change your limits. And it changes what your, not your limits, but sorry, it changes your results. But also there's changes to permits. I've heard quite a few people already when they had to renew their permit, especially out in Ontario, they add things on. They've added on requirements and changes. So if you change your process at all, right, they can also change the permit requirements. And I've heard, especially in Alberta and Saskatchewan, we might be getting more stringent guidelines coming. We've heard some rumblings from different governments and different operators that phosphorus might be coming. Like it's already here for the large cities, and there's a few places that have it. But for the small ones, which is most of you who have small systems, phosphorus is not part of your limits. But it might be coming, and there's very minimal or very few options. So we've developed an option, which we'll talk about maybe at the end if we have time. But there are options out there, but not many to help remove phosphorus. So meeting regulated limits is pretty important. And so we're going to go through and jump into a few projects, some of which we've already talked about, but and show you the changes. So when you hit sludge and target sludge, how it can impact your regulated limits. So in that project that I showed you with Aqua, right, we reduced 6,800 cubic meters of sludge. So when they had the before, so this is their limit was 25, so their BOD in both cells was getting very close or over their limit. TSS was getting close to, it was at 25, but they weren't totally too worried about TSS. So this is when they had a lagoon full of 6,800 cubic meters of sludge. When we cleaned that out, the year after, their BOD went down to 12 and 6. Their suspended solids to 5. That was a huge improvement. They were quite shocked. One of the concerns actually that they did have is that when we break down sludge, was it going to increase their suspended solids or increase their BOD? And that wasn't the case. They were able to break down, deal with all of their BOD and TSS, improve it significantly, well below the required results, and as well remove 6,000, almost 7,000 cubic meters of sludge. So that's what it does, is when you're able to get the root cause of all these things is the sludge. And when you're able to digest it into its simpler forms, into those nutrients, and then help the aerobic bacteria to break down the nitrogen and carbon, and then you're able to reach your limits a lot easier. And because really that sludge is the root cause of all problems. So here's Vibank. So Vibank was uncompliant for years, and that's why they were asking for help from anybody. But because they're small, really small village, nobody wanted to help them, unfortunately, because they were so small, it wasn't worth their money or their effort. And so they were uncompliant for a long time. So consistently really, really high. And they reduced that sludge. And within, that May to October, 6 months, they were able to reduce the 6 feet of sludge and get within their first time into the clear. They were all below all of their limits, which is pretty impressive, right? If you look at the BOD from 108 to 2, like that was incredible. And their, phosphorus, how it drops, right? Phosphorus here, it dropped. It's not that the phosphorus was broken down, because that doesn't happen. It's that the bacteria, there's no suspended phosphorus in the sludge. And so then as it breaks it down, that phosphorus settles and bacteria consume the phosphorus. And when they die off, they settle. So the phosphorus is able to settle naturally. And then they were able to break down all those organics such that there was basically no E. coli, very little total coliform in their BOD, and nitrogen were well within the realms that they were supposed to hit. So some huge improvements on their effluent quality. And these are the ones in Africa. These are really crazy numbers. I don't know if any of you have seen the effluent quality at 9,000 BOD or 15,000 COD. This is like high strength wastewater, like really high strength. And they were able to get it down to 130 and 185, which for them, they were able to reuse it. That's not a discharge quality in Canada. I know we want 25, but they were able to reuse the water, and which they have been doing on their crops right beside the lagoon. And the same for Pacayal, 95, 180. Like there was in the hundreds. Their total solids significantly dropped in suspended solids too. So now they're able to reuse them, right? And that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to reuse the water for irrigation and treatment rather than discharging it. So where before they weren't able to at all because the contaminants were so high that they just were not able to manage the process. So now we're going to go in. What we did as well is we surveyed and used the data from about 64 clients in Saskatchewan. So we went through 64 of them and we took their before and afters so that you can see where they were before and what they got to after treatment. And you can see fecal coliform E. coli, huge changes, almost basically down to nothing each time. Phosphorus, we saw, around maybe average of 3, going down to maybe an average of 0.5 or 1. So getting quite low in phosphorus, as well as ammonia, huge impacts on ammonia, all below the regulated limit of 5. So they were able to reach their limits and improvements. And these are, as you can see, not every town had a phosphorus a requirement to measure or ammonia. But you could see that the most significant one was fecal coliform and E. coli that most of them had to track of the 64. And then their BOD and total nitrogen, again, major improvements for the majority of them. So you can see that these are the averages. So on average, when you're able to manage sludge and treat it proactively using ActiZyme, you're able to get up to 100% for total E. coli and total coliform. But on average, it's 98 to 91%. BOD, 89% reduction, BOD5 in BOD. Phosphorus to 71, ammonia 94, nitrogen and nitrogen, 2 different types of nitrogen. So in essence, then, when you're able to manage that sludge, first of all, the water, the other processes, the aerobic processes after that sludge digestion through the anaerobic at the bottom of the lagoon is more effective, right? It's way more effective when you're able to break down the sludge so that the loading isn't so high. So when the loading is extremely high, it's very difficult to manage the sludge. Manage your water and go through your process. So when you're able to tackle that, break those down, then it causes, it improves the process throughout the lagoon, right? And so that's what you can see here is when we're able to break it down, we're able to improve treatment, right? And this is at the end of the game, end of the day, this is what's required. This is what the governments see. This is what's reported. And we're able to help clients from Ontario to BC and internationally, and everybody in between to be able to reach the limits that they require so they can then have more capacity to take on more strength water or increased population, and then be able to continue to treat and operate their system properly. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to turn some time over to my colleague Alan. He's going to talk about decision making. Alan's he was an operator for about 20 years plus of a town. And so Alan, you can unmute yourself. And we're going to have Alan talk about his decision making. So when he goes through talking about what he went through as an operator, and I'm sure you can all relate to it, you really want objective information. You want to be able to have information and share with your CAO and council so that you can give them confidence in what's going to happen. You want proven results, documented proven results, and an estimate of cost effectiveness of what the cost will be to achieve your results that you want. So with that Alan, I'll turn time over to you.
Yeah, okay. I'm not
Oh,
Deanne,
I
if
can't hear you,
anybody's.
Alan. Well, you're not muted. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you. Maybe I muted you. Go ahead.
Okay. Just telling everybody I'm not Deanne. It probably shows Deanne on the bottom of the screen. But anyways, yeah, I was town foreman for actually 35 years. And back in the mid 90s, we were looking at doing probably either uh, whether we were going to have to get into the lagoon and do sludge removal, whether we oh, help me out there, Jonathan. It would be
Yeah, the
uh,
different options. You were looking at quite a few different options, right?
yeah, we were gonna dredge. We looked at dredging and we did we probed the lagoon. We went right out to the middle. We had a fair bit of sludge right out where the inlet pipe was at the time. And we ended up deciding to get some prices, but one of the problems we did have is we were gonna have to build a collection pond for the stuff to go into, whether a drying pond or whatever. So we were going to have to purchase more land. We had the cost not only of the of dredging, but we had the cost of that. Um, so then we looked at maybe going with just taking it out and
And broadcasting it, you were
and
saying?
broadcasting, yeah.
Mhm.
And so we looked at that, and you have to do soil sampling, which costs money again on how much, and you have to sample the stuff you're putting so you knew how much you could put on the land, not overdo it. So yeah, the cost of everything, and of course, it was just so much at the time that we ended up looking at ActiZyme, which we had already been using a little bit. But of course, we were just using your standard AZ at the time, but we ended up upping it, the strength for at that time we did like a 5 year uh program, and
Mhm.
the lagoon itself was built in 1963. So you're thinking the mid 90s, the lagoon's 35 years old. And within that 5 years, we couldn't believe the difference. And to this day, it's nothing's ever been touched, and still use ActiZyme, even though I'm not there anymore. They're still continuing with the program of the maintenance part of it.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember you also saying to me yesterday when we were talking about it, is that there's also some challenges at looking at different types of ways to manage the sledge, right? If you have a liner or you don't have a liner, or which
Right.
method to take it out to, right?
Yeah, yeah. Which we didn't have a liner because of being the lagoon built in 63, but like in the last probably 30 years, if a lagoon from right now has been built, it's probably most of them have a liner.
Hmm.
So yeah, then you're dealing with that, there is definitely better they got better ways of doing it now so they don't damage that liner, but you still have that in the back of your mind that if it ever does get damaged, that's that's a pretty big expense to
Yeah, I
do
know
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and go into and talk a little bit more about when you're preparing to present for council and CEO and kind of the process that you had to go through.
Well, when we were talking about the cost comparison is one of the big things. Sometimes councils and CEOs don't understand the whole thing. I'm sure every community is the same. What they don't see, they don't really take it as serious. And of course, nowadays it's getting more and more stingent. Like Jonathan said, you got to meet your capacities for um, your BODs and all that for all your parameters now. It's changing all the time where you got to meet certain numbers. So yeah, you back then it wasn't as stringent as it is now, and I think it's going to get worse. But So now I think councils now are understanding, well, they got to meet that now, but back in my time, it was more or less the numbers part of it, to get rid of that much sludge. And of course, they're always skeptical, right? Well, how is a product going to get rid of that much sludge? Well, and I can understand where they come from. They don't think that something can work to get rid of sludge like that. So the best thing is to see other places, other towns, and present them with how it other towns advantage from it. So I think that's the biggest way to get to present it for a town foreman, to show them that, yeah, other places have benefited, and there is proof out there,
Hmm.
as long as you're using it properly. It definitely, there has been lots of places that benefited, and a lot. And since I've been working for ActiZyme after I retired with the town, I actually can't believe, talking to different foremans, how much it actually it works even better than I even realized, back when I was foreman, how many places, it helped them out so much. And it's actually kind of impressive, really, to because let's face it, we all have it don't matter what community, it's they struggle, they don't got the money to do some of these big jobs. And when you can help them out in this way, it feels very satisfying for me to be able to help communities out. And
Hmm. Hmm. That's great. So maybe outline a little bit of the impacts of the choices you made back then. Remember yesterday you were talking about the impacts on accumulation, your discharge, and cost.
yes, yes. And so when we after we got rid of most of that sludge, well, we were able to go back to only discharging from twice a year, spring and fall, to fall. We only had to go to once a year, unless it was a real wet year, of course. And so, yeah, it helped with your definitely helped with your capacity. And then, of course, your discharge, to reach your parameters, because, of course, eventually it reaches a creek. So they want your parameters to be acceptable levels. And then, yeah, like, really the overall cost when you figure it out by the year isn't really big money when you take it over the long run, compared to what we would have had to do. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like I said, for a small town or a small village, it definitely uh, makes quite a difference on overall costs.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks, Alan. I appreciate that. Thanks for helping out. So Alan actually works with ActiZyme now. He was an operator, like you said, for over 35 years and has been working with us for the last few years, working in eastern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So I'm sure a lot of you recognize Alan. So thanks, Alan, for your help.
yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it, and I'm happy to work with anybody that needs help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I love having Alan share the experiences. He's been there on the ground. He knows and can sympathize with the issues of the impacts and trying to minimize impacts, negative impacts, and trying to get the right impacts that you want on your sludge accumulation, making sure your discharge works, and when it comes down to what is the actual cost of it, so that it helps the operators and the CAOs and councils to be informed. You want, very objective information, very clear. You want substantial proof to show that it's there. So what we did too here is we came up with some questions, and so we found amongst all the people we work with, and these are pretty straightforward questions, but Not everybody asks them. So we wanted just to give you a few questions. Say, hey, these are questions that anybody should ask about using any of the products out there. Whether it's our products, someone else's products, or any type of other product, is if we're looking at changing a product or having one, is like, how long has the company been in business? That doesn't mean to say that something new could be developed that could be awesome, but what it does goes to show that is if someone's been around for a long time, that there's success. Most companies fail within the first 3 years. And so if you can get past 3 years, that means you have something of worth and that can be, celebrated, obviously, but also seems to provide solutions and solve problems. What is in the product, right? What is it made of? Is there substantial proof, right? That to us has been pretty important, right? You want to be able to know not just what people say they can do, right? You want to be able to know that they have done it, right? And how long they've done it, and how frequently and whereabouts have they done it, right? You want to be able to see that it can be accomplished in multiple situations, across multiple areas, and with different types of wastewater, so they can show that, hey, yeah, this is substantial proof. You want to be able to understand how it works. Different products have different ingredients. Some focus only on aerobic activity. Some have so that's like some of our competitors have products that have contents in it that are single bacterias or only bacteria that focus in aerobic conditions. Sludge is broken down in anaerobic conditions most effectively at the bottom of the lagoon where there's very little or no air or oxygen. And so you want to be able to know how it actually functions and be able to do it. Right? You want to understand how effectively, based on cost effectiveness, right? There's two components there. We can just compare just on cost, just on the dollar value, but it's not necessarily the dollar value that should be the comparison. It's the cost effectiveness. How effective is it? One product might cost more than another, but is 10 times or 100 times more effective based on the impacts. And so you want to be able to say, okay, X costs so much. Yes, and this was a quote from perhaps one of our competitors, but if ours is more expensive, you need to look at, okay, compared to what their results, their proven success, and the ability they have to reduce sludge at their volume, is that comparable? Or do you have to use 10 times or 2 times or 3 times more product of theirs, which then gets way more costly to be able to get close to the same results? So it's a pound for pound, not a very easy comparison. And so that becomes a bit more tough of a question, but it's a good one to really figure out. And then how easy is it to use? Is it easy to broadcast in, share, or is there mixing, or is there agitation, or what other things are required to get the job done? The last two questions are more about understanding the product. Who manufactures the product? We ask that question and advise people to do that so they can understand if the company they are buying these products from or these technologies actually have the understanding behind the product. Right? Do they develop it? Are they wholesalers? Are they just a representative? And is the company in Canada? I know there was some issues back during COVID getting stuff across the border. Is it made in Canada? Is it supplied in Canada? And then those of us who are proud to be Canadian, most of us, right, to support Canadian companies and Canadian people, right? Is it a Canadian company? So here are some of the answers that how we would answer those questions. So ActiZyme's been around for 70 years. To have any company last 70 years is phenomenal. Not only that, but we still have a good reputation. A good reputation in results, and a good reputation with our clients. Many of you who have used it for over 25 years. So what is ActiZyme contained? So it's actually a consortium of over 70 different types of bacteria. It's not one type of bacteria. It's not just aerobic bacteria. There's aerobic, facultative, and anaerobic bacteria. and heavily on the anaerobic because anaerobic bacteria is what breaks down the sludge. That's the core issue in your lagoons and in your effluent quality is breaking down the suspended solids, the organics, into its simpler forms. Plus, we have a wide spectrum of enzymes, right? You have all the enzymes from lipase to protease, I think it is. I don't know if I said that right, but protein to lipids to carbohydrates, everything in between are all that enzymes are there to break them down. So we have over 50 case studies, research lab reports, projects, hundreds of customer references from BC, Ontario, internationally, all highlighting the product's effectiveness. And a third-party company, I don't know if you know who Canoe Procurement is, or if any of you have used them. I know some of you have. Canoe Procurement put out a tender across all Canada for all products, for all biological treatments. And they went through a very intense process comparing everything in all of these questions in detail. And they picked ActiZyme as the most cost-effective, reputable company in Canada. And so approved with them across Canada, which is huge. That's a third-party company, has no connection or bias, and has went through and picked ActiZyme as amongst all other products. ActiZyme, what it really does, so it simply speeds up the natural decomposition of organic material. By doing that, it reduces all major pollutants. So this is just nature on steroids. It just improves the digestion significantly so that it's able to reach your objectives. And I always tell everybody, it's a function of time, product, temperature, and the type of waste you have. If you can change any one of those, you can improve your results. So if you had it heated like or warm like in Africa and South America, or if you add more product, or if your waste, is industrial waste versus municipal waste, those are all factors that we play in to make adjustments to be able to get the results that you want to get. So as far as cost comparison, sludge reduction for ActiZyme is typically 1/3 of the cost of manual removal. So when you're getting quotes for manual removal and it's upwards to 100,000, 200, I've heard all the way up to $1 million for some systems. This is a fraction of the cost. And you don't have to take your system offline. You don't have to worry about damaging the system with mechanical equipment. You don't have to worry about disposal of the digested sludge. You don't have to worry about it all. It all happens within the system on site and naturally. As far as maintenance goes, it averages between $6 to $6.80 per person per year to maintain their system, which is a fraction of the cost of any treatment plant that's out there. So when you look at treatment plants, they're often like $60, $70 per person per year to manage when they could use and maintain a simple lagoon system and use our product to improve its treatment rather than going to a mechanical treatment plant. So there are some significant advantages there. Though ActiZyme also boasts one of the highest, most effective biological solutions for reducing sludge. Amongst all of our competitors, I've seen multiple presentations. I won't mention any names or companies or products, but the best we've seen that's been out there promoted is somewhere around 13 to 15% reduction in 2 years. We've had over 80% in 1 year, multiple times across multiple systems. So the cost effectiveness of ActiZyme is extremely high compared to all other competitive products and or options. Going either manual, sorry, I'm kind of congested today, you can probably hear. Compared to manual or other type of products, ActiZyme definitely has the most bang for the buck. ActiZyme products are also pre-packaged, easy to use, pre-measured. We just tell you how many bags to use and apply in each location. They're used in lagoons and for treatment, but also in sewers. Someone did ask a question and I saw that and I was going to answer it. That was John. Can it be used in lift stations? Yes, of course. You can throw into lift stations and sewers. I know there's quite a few on the line that do that, that put it through their system. you're right about the short cycle time. If it's extremely fast, it may not have enough time to do much in the system. And so dispersing it across all areas in a collection system, or having direct contact on top of buildup, so that it has enough time to get to work. So there's different ways we can apply and move over there. Another question here is on extended aeration. Yeah, so we have quite a few facilities that have a lot of aeration, especially in Saskatchewan. But we've did some in Alberta and in BC as well, where the whole system's aerated. And in fact, I didn't put it into this one because I'm speaking in it in Banff. Where I'm going to be going around speaking about the project in Diamond Valley, and so I didn't want to have. It's a whole new project, whole new game and issues that they had there. So I'll be talking in Banff. We'll be presenting it hopefully in other provinces as well. Their whole system's aerated, and we were able to reduce their sludge by 70% in a year. It was awesome, even with major challenges and illegal dumping of the tens of thousands of cubic meters of sewage that destroyed the lagoon. We were still able to clean up their lagoon and see major improvements in their sewer lines and reduction of sulfur gas production, etc., etc. So we'll be presenting that at the conferences coming next year. And we did talk about it a little bit at Water Week this year in Alberta. So it does function in aeration systems, improve it. In fact, we just did a project in Drumheller. They have a full aerated system, wastewater plant, and they had like a lagoon, kind of small lagoon holding cell where the sludge had just overwhelmed it, packed it tight and solid. We put the product in there and it had loosened and broke up all the solids so that their aeration system can get back on track. So it was very overloaded and we were able to reclaim the system for them in Drumheller. And at the end here, as we mentioned, ActiZyme is owned and operated by Canadians, proudly made in BC, Canada. We are the manufacturer, the wholesaler. We understand the product, everything that goes in it. We know everything that goes in it. We are able to make adjustments. We provide and have made multiple different types of products based on the knowledge that we do have, which is part of the greatest successes, I think, of ActiZyme over the last, few decades is that because we're the manufacturer, we know what's in it. We can make the changes. We can make the improvements that are required to have the results that we want to have. So, which kind of leads me to the update. We're almost ready to wrap up, everybody. Thanks for your time. We just want to give you a quick update. So, ActiZyme, Mexico, please. Yes, we will get there soon. um, uh, so ActiZyme, we've been improving significantly. Even the actual ActiZyme AZ, we haven't changed the name, but AZ has actually transformed over the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years. We have changed a lot of the components to it to more high strength, more robust, and more resilient compounds. And we've actually seen improvements where they've been able to use even less product but get similar results. And so our products have actually changed. The naming of them haven't. And we've made new products. Some of you are aware of LS7, which is used for fat, oil, and grease. We have AZ Plus, which is a concentrated product for desludging. We have export products that we sell to other countries to manage coffee waste, and or other we have products for dairies and hog farms. We actually have quite a few other products that not many of the wastewater operators are aware of because you guys don't have those specific types of wastewater. And so we have developed quite a few new products. And we have new technologies. We have a new one that we're working on that's going to help remove phosphorus. Remember, we talked about phosphorus becoming one of the issues in a lot of lagoon systems everywhere because it's just building up and building up. Well, we're in the midst of launching a pilot to show how we can strip out phosphorus from all systems. That way, then algae will never break out. You'll never have algae blooms. So we can actually strip out the phosphorus of a system, maybe even beneficially reuse it. And so we're pretty excited. We'll give you more information about that as it comes available, as we get data from it. And even as we actually set up a pilot, we'll reach out to those locally around it so you can now come and see and see how it works. So then for the water tree, so we have the foundation. Some of you may not know that we have it. We felt like we want to work with those who are very unfortunate in their circumstances, both economically, governmentally, and educationally. They don't have the resources. And so we've been working with different aid organizations and granting processes to be able to fund projects across the world. We're doing some in Honduras and in Kenya. We're working to help in the Philippines and in Central South America and more locations. So we're trying to do what we can to make an impact worldwide as well, to give back and to help achieve those goals. I have one more question here that came up. How do we determine which product is best? That's a great question. So when we as ActiZyme representatives meet with you, we will go through a series of questions to determine which product is best. Often those questions are the type of situations you're having. So if if you're having issues in your sewers, we're trying to locate what's going on in your sewers. If it's coming from certain areas or certain businesses, if we can kind of locate where the source is coming from. You can take samples of your water to determine what's in the water, how much organic is in there, if AZ Plus would be effective in dealing with your sludge. So we ask a lot of those questions based on and help provide recommendations. If it's significantly grease, we can provide other options for LS7 or AZ Plus to really hit it hard with desludging. Or if it's just required just to maintain your process and use a maintenance one. So it's more of an assessment when we go in and meet with you one-on-one to make a connection. Another question here. Yeah, are there ways to hold the product and the chemical in a wet well so that it can have more more contact time to work with the grease and detergents? Yes, there is. So there are a few different ways to make an impact. I'll give you a couple of examples quickly, and then we'll go on to the draw. So I know a fellow that uses a pipe. He calls it a Zymer, I think is what he calls it. So there's a funnel on the top of his pipe, and he breaks it open, and he's able to guide the product down the pipe to make direct contact. So it helps get right into the wells. It helps it right into the sewer lines. Then you don't have to go in. There's another guy in Invermere. He's able to direct it directly on top of it. He opens as well. It opens and then kind of spreads across the top of the water. We have guys in Olds and a few other places they're looking at too. They have a bucket. They just take a bucket, drill a couple holes, put the product in it, and it just sits at the water level and comes back up and down and slowly releases on top of the water and on top of the grease. So that's another way that we've used it. Lastly, we do have a system, if required, that it goes into a small drum. Excuse me. And in that drum, you add a bit of water, and it will go through and spray across the whole lift station or wet well and hit all the walls, so it has contact on the walls. We've set it up in a few different locations with great success. And if you want to look at that, if you have power and water there, it's not always the case, but if you do have power and water, we can set it up and it can hit across everything and have direct contact, and it works quite well. So there are different ways of handling it, and those are some of the options. Last question here, and if there's any other questions, now's the time to put it in. We're about to go to the draw, so if you have any other questions, type them in the chat. Another question here, Luis, pulp mills. So we may have to develop a specific product for pulp mills because of the high level of cellulose as you're talking about. But we have had some level of experience in that. We haven't spent a lot of time on it, but we definitely could. Um, the issue with that is the cellulose takes a lot longer to break down than other components like carbohydrates. So cellulose can be focused and treated, and we do have a component in our product that helps with that. So we can run a pilot project for you, understand your system, understand the wastewater, and then go in and target that specific component because you don't have the other wastes that are typically inside other wastewater because typical residential wastewater will have everything. It catches it all. Where your wastewater is a very specific one. We do have products also for mines, different copper mines or coal mines, gold mines that we have used and have had great success. So we have other products there for that as well. So we know we can make an impact. It's about spending the time and developing a business case on understanding the issues and then developing a product and then protocols to test it. But we definitely could do something with that. So we'd love to reach out and talk to you about that. Okay. And due to respect to time, thanks for everybody's questions. If I haven't got to them, um, we are aware of all the claims of other products. Thanks, Stephen. And yeah, there are lots of claims out there. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Anybody can make a claim. Um, any product out there could say that they do anything. Um, but do they have, 50 case studies and projects, lab tests galore, and sludge project removal projects like the ActiZyme does? That I don't know that that's the case. There's not many that I know of, if there's any, that has the depth, the amount of experience, the years of experience, and being able to actually have proven results consistently across different areas, different climates, different situations. So not to say again that a new technology might come out and be amazing, but if there's no proof, then you're gambling on what might happen or not. We don't know whether it will work or whether it won't work. But we know ours does, and we know it's comparable cost to all other options out there, and we have the results. So we were very, very confident in what we do, and that's why we help so many places all over the place, from Canada, all over Canada and internationally to solve their problems. So we'll wrap up questions from there. If I haven't got your question, feel free to email us, reach out to your rep. There is an exit survey if you want us to follow up. Just put in your name and email too, and we can reach out to you and help you um, get off and rolling.